The rain fell in heavy sheets against the cemetery's black umbrellas, as if the sky itself was mourning. I stood motionless before the twin caskets, feeling oddly detached from my body. My parents, gone in an instant. A tragic car accident, they said. No survivors. No goodbyes. Elizabeth. Michael's voice cut through my trance. My husband of 8 years placed his hand on my shoulder, his touch lacking the warmth I desperately needed. We need to talk. I nodded, assuming he wanted to discuss funeral arrangements, or perhaps offer some comfort. The cemetery had emptied. Even the priest had retreated to his car. Only the gravediggers remained in the distance, patiently waiting for us to leave so they could lower my parents into the cold ground. Not here, I whispered, my voice breaking. Please, let's go home. No, Michael replied, his tone businesslike. Here is perfect. No witnesses. I looked up, confused by his choice of words. His face, once so familiar, so beloved, had transformed into something unrecognizable. His jawline was tight, his blue eyes glacial. I'm leaving you, Elizabeth. 5 words. 5 simple words that didn't make sense in the context of this day, this moment. I blinked rapidly, certain I had misheard him. What? I'm leaving you, he repeated, enunciating each syllable with clinical precision. You're broke now. Your parents didn't leave you anything. They were bankrupt. My mind struggled to process his words through the fog of grief. This is about money? My parents just died, Michael. Yes, and their financial problems died with them. Did you really think your father's small publishing company was thriving? They've been in debt for years. Everything they had left went to maintaining appearances, your shopping sprees, our vacations, that ridiculous sports car you insisted on. It was all a facade. The rain soaked through my black dress, but I couldn't feel it anymore. My body had gone numb. The penthouse is in my name, he continued, checking his watch casually. You have until the end of the week to move out. I've already contacted a lawyer about the divorce. I searched his face for any sign of the man I had married, the aspiring writer I'd met in college, the one who had quoted poetry during his wedding vows, who had promised to love me through better or worse. There was nothing of him left. Why are you doing this? I asked, my voice barely audible over the rain. His smirk was the answer I never wanted. Good luck, Elizabeth. You're going to need it. He turned and walked away, leaving me alone between my parents' caskets. I didn't call after him. I didn't collapse in theatrical grief. I simply stood there, rain mixing with tears on my face, wondering how I had missed the signs. How had I not seen that the man I loved was capable of such calculated cruelty? That night, I returned to his penthouse. The space that had been my home for nearly a decade suddenly felt foreign. I moved through the rooms like a ghost, touching photo frames, running my fingers along the spines of books we had collected together. Everything looked the same, but nothing was. I found Michael in his study, packing his manuscripts into a box. When did you stop loving me? I asked from the doorway. He didn't look up. Does it matter? It does to me. Michael sighed, finally meeting my gaze. I never loved you, Elizabeth. I loved what you represented. Connections, access to your father's publishing world, the lifestyle your family's money could provide. Now that's gone. His confession hit me with physical force. I steadied myself against the doorframe, trying to breathe through the pain. 8 years, I whispered. 8 years of my life with someone who was just using me. Don't be dramatic. You got what you wanted too. The perfect husband to show off at your country club luncheons. Someone to validate your existence as more than just a trust fund baby. We used each other, but he was wrong. I had loved him. Wholly, foolishly, blindly. That night, I slept in the guest room, staring at the ceiling as my mind replayed every moment of our relationship, searching for clues I had missed. By morning, grief had hardened into something else. Determination. I packed only what I could carry, clothes, a few pieces of jewelry that had belonged to my mother, and the laptop Michael had given me for Christmas. I didn't leave a note. There was nothing left to say. Without a destination in mind, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through contacts, unsure who to call. Most of my friends were actually our friends. Wealthy couples we dined with, traveled with, people who would undoubtedly side with Michael once the gossip spread. Then I saw her name, Olivia Chen, my college roommate. The one friend Michael had never warmed to, claiming she was too intense for his taste. We had drifted apart after graduation, reconnecting only through occasional social media comments and holiday cards. She had built a successful career as a literary agent, ironic, given my family's publishing background, while I had become, what? Mrs. Michael Barrett, a role that no longer existed. With trembling fingers, I pressed call, praying she would answer. 3 rings later, she did. Elizabeth, is that you? I heard about your parents. I'm so sorry. Her voice, warm and concerned, broke something inside me. I had forgotten what genuine care sounded like. Olivia, I managed, my voice cracking. I need help. 2 hours later, I was sitting in Olivia's modest apartment in Brooklyn, clutching a mug of tea as I told her everything. My parents' deaths, Michael's betrayal, my sudden freefall from privilege to destitution. What an absolute bastard, she said when I finished, her face flushed with anger on my behalf. To do that to you at your parents' funeral, there's a special place in hell for men like him. I don't know what to do, I admitted. I have no money, no job skills. I've spent my entire adult life being Michael Barrett's wife and Jonathan Wheeler's daughter. Olivia's expression softened. That's not true. You have an English literature degree from Columbia. You're smart, resourceful, and stronger than you realize. I haven't used my degree for anything except analyzing the classics section of our home library. Then it's time to dust it off. She squeezed my hand. You can stay here as long as you need. My spare room isn't fancy, but it's yours. And I might have a job opportunity for you. A job? Doing what? My agency is looking for a new assistant. The pay isn't great, but it's a foot in the door of publishing. A world you already know something about even if you don't realize it. For the first time since the funeral, I felt a flicker of hope. Do you really think I could do it? I know you can. Olivia smiled. This isn't the end, Elizabeth. It's a terrible, painful beginning. But a beginning nonetheless. That night, as I lay in Olivia's spare bedroom surrounded by cardboard boxes and framed literary posters, I finally allowed myself to weep. For my parents, for my marriage, for the sheltered woman I had been. By morning, my tears had dried, leaving behind a strange sense of clarity. I had lost everything that had defined me. Now I would discover who Elizabeth Wheeler really was, without the protective shell of wealth and status. What I didn't know, couldn't have known, was that the true shock was yet to come. Michael's betrayal was just the first tremor of an earthquake that would reveal my entire life had been built on quicksand, and somewhere in the rubble lay answers to questions I hadn't even thought to ask. As I drifted into an exhausted sleep, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mrs. Barrett, this is Gregory Finch, your parents' attorney. There are matters concerning your parents' estate that require immediate attention. Please contact me as soon as possible. What you believe to be true is not the whole story. I stared at the message, my heart racing. What could possibly be left to discuss? Unless Michael had lied about my parents' financial situation too. Sleep forgotten, I sat up in bed, my finger hovering over the reply button. Whatever truth awaited me in Gregory Finch's office, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Nothing in my life was as it seemed, and I was done with being the last to know. The law offices of Finch & Associates occupied the entire 15th floor of a sleek Manhattan building. I stepped off the elevator the next morning, acutely aware of my wrinkled blouse and the bags under my eyes. Less than a week ago, I'd have waltzed in confidently, dressed in designer clothes, the picture of privilege. Now I felt like an imposter. Mrs. Barrett, a slim man in his 60s greeted me, extending his hand. Gregory Finch, thank you for coming on such short notice. It's Ms. Wheeler now, I corrected him, the words feeling strange on my tongue. Or it will be soon. My husband and I are separating. Something flickered across Mr. Finch's face. Not surprise, but a knowing look that made me uneasy. I see, he said carefully. Please, come in. His office was old-world elegance. leather-bound books, a mahogany desk, and floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of Central Park. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. Ms. Wheeler, what I'm about to share with you is highly sensitive. Before we begin, I need your assurance that this conversation will remain confidential. My stomach tightened. Of course. Finch nodded, removing his glasses and rubbing the bridge of his nose. Your parents came to see me 3 months ago. They were concerned about your husband. Michael? I leaned forward. Why? They had reason to believe he was not who he claimed to be, that his interest in you, and by extension your family's publishing house, was not entirely sincere. The air in the room seemed thin. What do you mean? Your father had hired a private investigator to look into Michael's background. What they discovered was troubling. Finch opened a drawer and pulled out a thick manila folder. He slid it across the desk to me. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were photographs. Michael meeting with men I didn't recognize in restaurants, hotel lobbies, parking garages. Financial statements showing large sums moving through accounts I knew nothing about. And most damning of all, a detailed report on how Michael had been secretly undermining Wheeler Publishing from the inside. I don't understand, I whispered, though a terrible clarity was beginning to dawn. Your husband has been systematically sabotaging your family's business for years, Finch explained gently. Turning down promising manuscripts, driving away key editors, mismanaging funds, all while positioning himself to take control once the company inevitably failed. My mind raced back through the years. Michael's constant presence at the publishing house, his insistence on being involved in business decisions despite having no official role, his late-night meetings with my father that always left Dad looking drained. But why? Wheeler Publishing isn't even that valuable. It's not about the current value, Finch said. It's about the catalog. The intellectual property rights to hundreds of books published over the last 50 years. Rights that, if properly leveraged in today's digital market, could be worth millions. I felt physically ill. And my parents? The accident? Finch's expression darkened. The police report indicated a brake failure in your father's car. The timing is concerning. Are you suggesting Michael had something to do with their deaths? The question seemed absurd even as I asked it. Yet the evidence before me painted a picture of a man I clearly never knew. I'm not making any accusations, Finch said carefully, but there is something else you should know. Your parents' financial situation is not what Mr. Barrett claims. He pushed another folder toward me. This one contained bank statements, property deeds, and investment portfolios. Wheeler Publishing may be struggling, but your parents were far from bankrupt. They had diversified their investments years ago. Real estate, tech startups, a silent partnership in a successful literary app. Their collective worth is approximately $12 million. The room spun around me. But Michael said, Mr. Barrett only knew what your parents wanted him to know. They became suspicious of his intentions and began keeping certain assets private. I closed my eyes, trying to process the magnitude of these revelations. So Michael left me because he thought I was broke. But I'm not actually broke? Not only are you not broke, Ms. Wheeler, but you are the sole heir to your parents' estate. Everything they owned is now yours, including controlling interest in Wheeler Publishing. A hysterical laugh escaped my lips. He left me at their funeral because he thought there was nothing left to take. So it would seem. Finch's tone was sympathetic but professional. However, there's a complication. Your husband has already begun proceedings to contest the will, claiming that as your spouse, he's entitled to a portion of any assets. My momentary elation crashed. Of course, Michael wouldn't let go easily once he learned the truth. What do I do? Fight, Finch said simply. Your parents anticipated this. They left instructions and resources to protect you and their legacy. He pulled out a small key from his desk drawer. This opens a safety deposit box at First Manhattan Bank. Inside, you'll find documents that could be useful in keeping Mr. Barrett at bay. I suggest you retrieve them as soon as possible. What kind of documents? I think it's better if you see for yourself. But I will say this. Your parents were preparing for a worst-case scenario. They wanted to ensure you'd be protected no matter what. As I left Finch's office, clutching the key and the folders of evidence, My mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Grief for my parents, rage at Michael's betrayal, fear of what lay ahead, and beneath it all, a strange, unfamiliar feeling that took me several blocks to identify. Power. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't just Michael Barrett's wife or Jonathan Wheeler's daughter. I was Elizabeth Wheeler, heir to a fortune and a publishing empire, with resources at my disposal and a burning desire for justice. I pulled out my phone and texted Olivia, "Need to talk. Something's happened." Her reply came instantly. "My office. 1 hour. Bring wine. The expensive kind." I smiled despite everything. Olivia always knew exactly what a situation called for. The First Manhattan Bank was only a few blocks from Olivia's agency. I decided to retrieve the contents of the safety deposit box before meeting her. Whatever my parents had left me, I needed to know now. The bank manager escorted me personally to the vault, treating me with the deference reserved for valued clients. Another thing Michael had lied about. The Wheeler name still meant something in this city. Alone in the viewing room, I inserted the key into the lock, my heart pounding. The box contained 3 items: a sealed envelope with my name written in my father's handwriting, a USB drive, and a small leather-bound journal I recognized as my mother's. I opened the envelope first. "My dearest Elizabeth," my father's letter began. "If you're reading this, then our worst fears have come to pass. Your mother and I have discovered disturbing information about Michael, information that puts us, and potentially you, in danger." The letter detailed how they had uncovered Michael's true nature, his web of lies, his manipulations, his secret meetings with competitors of Wheeler Publishing. They believed he had married me solely to gain access to the company and its valuable catalog rights. "We couldn't confront him directly without putting you at risk," Dad wrote. "So, we've been gathering evidence and preparing a contingency plan. The USB drive contains everything we've collected: emails, recordings, financial transactions, more than enough to keep him from contesting the will or claiming any part of your inheritance." My hand shook as I continued reading. "Elizabeth, we know this will be devastating for you. We've watched you build a life with this man, believing in his love. Please know that none of this is your fault. You saw the good in him that he pretended to be. It's the same quality that makes you your mother's daughter, the ability to see the best in people." Tears blurred my vision as I read the final paragraphs. "Trust Gregory Finch. Trust Olivia Chen. Yes, we've kept in touch with her over the years. She's known some of our concerns and has been a silent ally. And most importantly, trust yourself. You are stronger than you know, smarter than you've been allowed to believe. It's time for you to take back your life and your legacy. All our love, always, Dad and Mom. P.S. The journal contains your mother's thoughts and observations about Michael over the years. Her instincts were always sharper than mine. Read it when you're ready." I pressed the letter to my chest, feeling both comforted and hollowed out by my father's words. They had known. All this time they had been trying to protect me from the predator in my own home. The USB drive would have to wait until I had access to a computer, but I slipped my mother's journal into my bag, unable to read it just yet. Some wounds were still too fresh. When I arrived at Olivia's agency, I was surprised to find her waiting alone in the conference room, a bottle of wine already open. "I cleared my schedule for the rest of the day," she explained, pouring me a generous glass. "Your text sounded urgent. You have no idea." I set the folders from Finch's office on the table. "Did you know? About Michael? About my parents' suspicions?" Olivia's expression grew serious. "Not everything. Your father reached out to me about 6 months ago. He was concerned about some of Michael's business dealings but didn't want to upset you with vague suspicions. I helped connect him with people who could investigate discreetly. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me?" she asked gently. "You were in love with him, Liz, and I was the friend he'd successfully pushed out of your life years ago." She was right. I would have defended Michael, maybe even cut Olivia off completely if she'd tried to warn me. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Don't be. You're here now, and from the look on your face, you've learned the truth." I told her everything. Michael's betrayal, the secret fortune, the evidence my parents had gathered, the safety deposit box. When I finished, Olivia was silent for a long moment, twirling her wine glass thoughtfully. "So what are you going to do?" she finally asked. I took a deep breath. "I'm going to fight. For my parents' legacy, for the company, for what's rightfully mine. And I'm going to make sure Michael gets exactly what he deserves." Nothing. A slow smile spread across Olivia's face. "That's the Liz Wheeler I remember from college. The one who wouldn't take crap from anyone. Not even that pretentious poetry professor who tried to tell you your analysis of Emily Dickinson was quaintly feminine." I laughed, the sound surprising me. God, I'd forgotten about that. I wrote a 15-page rebuttal and left it in his mailbox. "With annotations," Olivia added, laughing with me. "That's who you really are, Liz. Not the perfect society wife Michael tried to mold you into." Her words struck a chord. For 8 years, I'd been living someone else's version of my life, shrinking myself to fit the space Michael allocated for me. "No more. I need your help," I said, suddenly serious. "I don't just want to protect my inheritance. I want to rebuild Wheeler Publishing, make it what my father always dreamed it could be." Olivia's eyes lit up. "Now you're talking. But first things first. We need to look at what's on that USB drive." She pulled her laptop from her bag and inserted the drive. What we found made my blood run cold. There were recordings, dozens of them. Michael's voice, crystal clear, in conversations with business associates, discussing how he was positioning himself to take control of Wheeler Publishing, how he had the old man wrapped around his finger through his daughter, how my parents were standing in the way of progress. In the most recent recording, dated just 2 weeks before the accident, Michael sounded angry. "They're getting suspicious," he said to someone. "Jonathan's been asking questions, looking into the rejected manuscripts. We need to accelerate the timeline." The unknown man's voice replied, "These things can't be rushed." We agreed. 2 more years of controlled decline, then the bankruptcy filing, then the acquisition. "I don't have 2 more years," Michael snapped. "I've wasted enough time playing house with their daughter. I need this to happen now." The recording ended abruptly. Olivia and I stared at each other, the implications hanging heavy in the air. "Liz," she said slowly, "you need to take this to the police." I shook my head. "Not yet. The recording is suspicious, but it's not proof that he had anything to do with the accident. We need more." "What are you thinking?" A plan was forming in my mind. Risky, perhaps even reckless, but potentially effective. "I'm thinking Michael doesn't know that I know any of this. He thinks I'm a broken, penniless widow sleeping on a friend's couch." "You want to use that?" Olivia said, catching on quickly. "Exactly. If he believes I'm desperate and clueless, he might let his guard down, make mistakes, reveal something we can use. That's dangerous, Liz. This man is clearly not who you thought he was. What if he's actually involved in your parents' deaths?" I reached for the wine bottle, refilling both our glasses. "That's why I need your help. I can't do this alone." Olivia studied me for a long moment, then nodded decisively. "All right, I'm in. But we do this smart. No unnecessary risks." Agreed. As we began outlining our strategy, my phone buzzed with a text. Michael's name appeared on the screen. "I need the blue file from my office, the one in the bottom drawer. Bring it to the Waldorf tomorrow, 3 p.m. Don't be late. No, please. No, how are you holding up after your parents' funeral?" Just demands, as if I were still his obedient wife. I showed the message to Olivia, a grim smile forming on my lips. "It's starting already. He needs something from me. Are you going to meet him?" I typed a reply, channeling the meek, compliant Elizabeth he expected. "Of course, I'll be there." Looking up at Olivia, I felt a surge of determination. Round 1 begins tomorrow, and Michael has no idea who he's really dealing with. As we continued planning late into the night, fueled by wine and righteous anger, I felt a strange sense of gratitude amid the grief. My parents had given me one final gift, the truth, and with it, the chance to reclaim my life and bring Michael Barrett to justice. What I didn't realize was that the blue file Michael wanted contained information far more damning than anything we'd discovered so far. Information that would put me in the crosshairs of dangers I couldn't yet imagine. The game I was preparing to play was far more treacherous than I knew, with stakes higher than I could comprehend. And somewhere in the shadows, someone was watching both of us, waiting to see which move I would make next. The Waldorf Hotel's lobby gleamed with old-world opulence, crystal chandeliers, marble floors, the soft murmur of wealth. I clutched the blue file to my chest, my heart hammering against my ribs. Olivia's words echoed in my mind. "Remember, you're just Elizabeth, the abandoned wife." Meek, confused, heartbroken. I'd dressed the part. No makeup, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing the same clothes I'd left the penthouse in days ago. Michael would expect me to be falling apart. I'd give him exactly what he expected. "There you are." His voice, once so beloved, now sent a chill down my spine. Michael strode toward me from the bar, confident in an expensive suit, looking for all the world like a man without a care, not someone who had just abandoned his wife at her parents' funeral. "Michael," I managed a small, tremulous smile. "I got the file you wanted." He didn't hug me, didn't ask how I was, just held out his hand for the file. "Let's sit." We moved to a quiet corner of the lobby, settling into plush armchairs. I handed him the file, careful to let our fingers brush, watching his face for any reaction. Nothing. Not even discomfort at touching the woman he'd discarded. "Thank you for coming," he said, his tone businesslike as he flipped through the pages. "I know things ended abruptly between us." "Abruptly?" I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. "You left me at my parents' funeral." He looked up, his blue eyes cold. "I was honest with you, Elizabeth, more than most men would be. The money's gone. There's no reason for us to stay together." I let my lower lip tremble, my eyes filling with tears that weren't entirely fake. 8 years, Michael. Didn't that mean anything to you? Business is business. Marriage is business. You'll understand that someday. He returned to the file, seemingly satisfied with what he found. "How are you managing? Found a place to stay?" "I'm with Olivia. She's been kind enough to take me in." I twisted my wedding ring, which I'd deliberately kept on for this meeting. "I don't know what I'm going to do, Michael. I have nothing." Something flickered across his face. Satisfaction? Relief? "You'll land on your feet. You always had a knack for that." "Did I? I don't even know who I am anymore without you. Without my parents." I let my voice break on the last word. "Your father wasn't the business genius everyone thought he was," Michael said, his tone dismissive. "Wheeler Publishing has been running on fumes for years. I tried to help, suggested modernization, digital strategies. He wouldn't listen." I swallowed my rage, forcing myself to nod meekly. He was old-fashioned, stubborn, set in his ways. Michael snapped the file shut and tucked it into his briefcase. "The company will be liquidated soon. There are debts to pay." "Liquidated? But it's been in my family for 3 generations. That's life, Elizabeth. Things end." I studied his face, searching for any sign of the man I thought I'd married. There was nothing. Just a cold, calculating stranger wearing my husband's face. "I need to ask you something," I said, voice small. "The police report mentioned brake failure. Do you think, could someone have tampered with their car?" Michael's expression didn't change, but something hardened in his eyes. "What an imagination you have. It was an accident, Elizabeth. A tragic accident. Don't make it into something it wasn't." "Of course," I murmured, dropping my gaze. "I'm just trying to make sense of everything." "Some things don't make sense. They just happen." He checked his watch. "I need to go. I have a meeting." As he stood, I reached for his hand. "Michael, please. Could we try again? I still love you." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but I needed to maintain the illusion of the devastated, desperate wife. He extracted his hand from mine, almost gently. "It's over, Elizabeth. The sooner you accept that, the better for both of us. Can I at least get my things from the penthouse? I've had them packed. My assistant will contact you to arrange delivery." He straightened his tie. "Take care of yourself." And then he was gone, striding confidently through the lobby, not once looking back. I remained seated, counting to 30 before pulling out my phone. "He's leaving," I texted Olivia. "Following now." Our plan was simple. I would meet with Michael while Olivia waited nearby. Then she would follow him after our meeting, see where he went, who he met with. It was a long shot, but we needed to know who his mysterious partners were. I gave Michael a few minutes head start, then made my way out of the hotel. Olivia was waiting across the street in her car, engine running. "Get in," she called as I approached. He just got into a black Audi, headed east. We followed at a safe distance, winding through Manhattan traffic. Michael's car eventually turned onto a quiet street in the Upper East Side, stopping in front of a stately brownstone. "Whose place is that?" Olivia asked as we parked a few cars back. "I don't know. I've never seen it before." We watched as Michael exited his car and jogged up the steps. The door opened before he could knock, revealing a tall, silver-haired man in an impeccable suit. "That's Victor Harrington," I gasped. "Who?" "Chairman of Pinnacle Media Group. They tried to buy Wheeler Publishing 3 years ago. My father turned them down flat." I fumbled for my phone, quickly snapping several photos as the two men shook hands. Dad said Harrington was ruthless, that he'd gutted every independent publisher he'd acquired. "Looks like your husband found a willing partner," Olivia observed grimly. We waited for nearly 2 hours, watching the brownstone, speculating about what might be happening inside. Finally, Michael emerged, followed by Harrington and 2 other men I didn't recognize. "We need to get closer," I whispered. "I need to hear what they're saying." "Too risky," Olivia protested. "If Michael sees you—" But I was already opening the car door. "I'll be careful. Keep the engine running." I slipped out and moved along the street, keeping to the shadows of the trees that lined the sidewalk. As I drew closer, their voices became clearer. "The probate hearing is next week," Michael was saying. "Without a valid will contesting my rights as her husband, I'll have controlling interest by the end of the month." "And you're certain there's no other will?" Harrington asked. Jonathan Wheeler was nothing if not predictable. Standard will, everything to his daughter, who happens to be my wife. The law's clear. I'm entitled to half as her spouse. One of the other men spoke up. "What about the brake line investigation? Any movement on that?" My blood ran cold. I pressed myself against a tree trunk, straining to hear Michael's response. "Police ruled it an accident. Case closed. The mechanic was cooperative." Harrington nodded. "Good. The sooner we put this unpleasantness behind us, the sooner we can move forward with the acquisition. The market for back catalog rights won't wait forever." "I just saw Elizabeth," Michael continued. "She's exactly as expected. Broken, desperate, clueless. She has no idea what's happening." "Keep it that way," Harrington warned. "The last thing we need is her getting suspicious and hiring some crusading lawyer." "Trust me," Michael laughed. "She couldn't find her way out of a paper bag without me telling her which end is open. She spent 8 years being the perfect trophy wife, not developing any skills or backbone." Their laughter felt like a physical blow. I wanted to step out from the shadows, confront them, scream the truth, that I knew everything, that they wouldn't get away with what they'd done to my parents, what they were trying to do to me. But Olivia's cautionary words kept me rooted in place. This wasn't the time. We needed more evidence, needed to be smart. As the men continued their conversation about acquisition timelines and market valuations, I carefully backed away, returning to Olivia's car. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said as I slipped into the passenger seat. "I think I just heard them admit to killing my parents," I whispered, my voice shaking. Olivia's eyes widened. "Are you sure?" I repeated the conversation verbatim, my mind racing with the implications. "The mechanic was cooperative? What does that mean if not that he was paid off to tamper with the brakes? We need to go to the police." "With what? Snippets of conversation I overheard while spying on them? They'll dismiss it as the paranoid ravings of a grieving daughter." I shook my head. "No, we need hard evidence. Something irrefutable. What about the recordings on the USB drive? Suspicious but not conclusive. We need the mechanic. If he was paid to sabotage the brakes, he's the key to everything." Olivia started the car, pulling away from the curb as Michael and his associates began dispersing. "The police report should have the mechanic's name. Finch will have a copy." I pulled out my phone, texting him our request. His response came quickly. "Thomas Reed, Reed's Auto Shop, Queens. Worked on your father's car 3 days before the accident. Regular maintenance. We need to talk to him. I decided. Not we, Olivia countered. You're too recognizable. If Michael has this guy in his pocket, he might alert him if you show up asking questions. She was right. So what do we do? A slow smile spread across Olivia's face. I have a friend. A former client, actually. Ex-cop turned thriller writer. He might be willing to help us have a conversation with Mr. Reed. 2 days later, we were sitting in Olivia's apartment with Jack Donovan, a barrel-chested man with salt and pepper hair and eyes that miss nothing. So let me get this straight, he said, after we'd explained the situation. You think your husband arranged to have your parents killed by tampering with their car, all to get control of a publishing company. And $12 million in assets, I added, plus the catalog rights worth potentially much more. Jack whistled low. People have killed for less. But this is thin, Elizabeth. Very thin. I know what I heard. Overheard conversations are notoriously unreliable and inadmissible in court. Jack tapped his fingers on the table thoughtfully. But the mechanic, if he was involved, that's different. He might talk, especially if he thinks he's been set up to take the fall. You think Michael would turn on him? Olivia asked. In a heartbeat. Men like your husband don't protect the little guys. They're expendable. I leaned forward. So you'll help us? I'll talk to Reed. Feel him out. But no promises. Jack's expression was serious. And you two stay away. If this goes sideways, I don't want you anywhere near it. We agreed, though reluctantly in my case. The idea of sitting on the sidelines while others fought my battles grated against my newfound resolve. But Jack was right. My presence would only complicate things. The next day, while Jack was making his way to Reed's auto shop, I decided to visit the Wheeler publishing offices. I hadn't been there since the funeral, and I needed to see for myself what was happening. The receptionist's shocked expression when I walked in told me everything I needed to know. Michael had been busy. Mrs. Barrett, she exclaimed, rising from her desk. We weren't expecting you. Ms. Wheeler, I corrected gently. And I own this company, Sarah. I don't need an appointment. Her eyes darted nervously to the bank of elevators. Of course, it's just, Mr. Barrett said you wouldn't be coming in, that you were taking time to grieve. Did he? How thoughtful of him. I managed a tight smile. Is he here? No, he's in meetings all day, off-site. Perfect. I'd like to see my father's office, please. Sarah hesitated, then handed me a visitor's badge. Of course. It's been cleared out, though. Mr. Barrett had everything boxed up. My stomach tightened. When? The day after the funeral. Of course he had. Michael wouldn't waste any time erasing my father's presence, consolidating his own position. I took the elevator to the executive floor, steeling myself for what I might find. My father's corner office, the space where I'd spent countless hours as a child, watching him work, learning the business I was meant to inherit someday, was indeed empty. The bookshelves that had once housed first editions of Wheeler Publishing's most successful titles were bare. The antique desk where he'd signed contracts, mentored authors, built a legacy, gone. I stood in the doorway, a wave of grief washing over me so intensely I had to grip the frame to steady myself. It wasn't just furniture that had been removed, it was the last physical connection to my father's life's work. Can I help you, Mrs. Barrett? I turned to find Patricia Winters, my father's executive assistant for the last 15 years, watching me with concern. Patricia. I moved to hug her, drawing comfort from the familiar scent of her jasmine perfume. It's good to see you. She returned the embrace tightly. I've been so worried about you. After what happened at the funeral, she trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. You heard? Patricia nodded. Office gossip travels fast. Plus, Mr. Barrett made it quite clear when he started cleaning house. Cleaning house? A cold dread settled in my stomach. He's let go half the editorial staff already. The senior editors mostly. People loyal to your father. Replaced them with his own people from Pinnacle. He can't do that. He doesn't have the authority. Patricia's expression was sympathetic, but resigned. He showed the board a power of attorney document, claiming you'd given him full control during your period of grief. With your parents gone and you unavailable, no one questioned it. Fury rose in me like a tidal wave. A forged power of attorney? How far was Michael willing to go? Where are my father's things? The contents of this office? Storage room in the basement. Patricia lowered her voice. I made sure to keep track of everything. I knew you'd want to know. Thank you. I squeezed her hand. Is there somewhere we can talk privately? I need your help. Patricia led me to a small conference room at the end of the hall. Once the door was closed, I told her everything. Michael's betrayal, my parents' secret fortune, the evidence suggesting Michael had been working with Pinnacle to sabotage Wheeler Publishing from within. I knew something wasn't right, she said when I finished. Your father had been increasingly concerned in the months before the accident. He was checking and double-checking everything Michael touched, but I had no idea it went this deep. I need access to my father's computer, his emails, his files, anything that might contain evidence of what Michael was doing. Patricia hesitated. Mr. Barrett had IT wipe your father's computer. Standard procedure, he said. Of course he had. Michael was nothing if not thorough. But, she continued with a small smile, your father was old school. He kept backups, physical ones. My heart leapt. Where? External hard drives. He kept one in his desk, which Mr. Barrett found and took. But there was another. A failsafe, your father called it. He kept it in the false bottom of the third drawer of the credenza in his home office. I stared at her. The lake house? But it's been sold. My parents downsized last year. Patricia shook her head. Your father told me they kept the lake house off the books. Something about wanting a retreat that nobody knew about. He was quite insistent that it remain private, especially from Mr. Barrett. A secret property? One that Michael knew nothing about? Hope surged through me. Do you have the address? Patricia pulled out her phone. I can do better than that. I have the keys. Your father left them with me for emergencies. Said I should only give them to you if something happened to him. As she handed me the small key ring, my phone buzzed with a text from Jack. Need to meet. Now. Reed talked. It's worse than we thought. I looked at Patricia, a plan forming rapidly in my mind. I need one more thing from you. Can you get me the personnel files for everyone Michael has fired? And any documents he's signed using this alleged power of attorney? It's risky, she warned. If he finds out, he won't. Not until it's too late. I gripped her hand. My parents built this company. I won't let Michael destroy it. Patricia nodded, determination replacing her earlier caution. I'll get you everything by tomorrow. As I left the building, careful to avoid being seen by anyone who might report back to Michael, I felt a strange sense of calm. The pieces were falling into place. Michael thought he was dismantling my family's legacy piece by piece. He had no idea I was building a case that would bring his entire world crashing down. But first, I needed to hear what Jack had learned from the mechanic, and why it was worse than we thought. I hailed a taxi, giving the driver the address of the coffee shop where Jack was waiting. As the car pulled away from the curb, I didn't notice the black sedan that eased into traffic behind us. I didn't see the driver speak urgently into his phone. I didn't realize that my careful investigation had just been compromised, and that Michael now knew exactly what I was doing. The game had changed, and the stakes had just become life or death. The coffee shop was crowded, buzzing with afternoon energy. Jack sat in a corner booth, his broad shoulders hunched over a steaming mug. His expression when he saw me made my blood run cold. "We need to move," he said without preamble, grabbing his jacket. "Not safe here." Outside, he guided me briskly down the street, checking over his shoulder every few steps. "My car's around the corner. Reed's dead." "What?" I stumbled, and Jack steadied me. "Found in his garage this morning. Carbon monoxide poisoning. Supposed suicide." "But you talked to him?" "Yesterday." Jack ushered me into his sedan. "He was scared, Elizabeth. Said a guy paid him $5,000 to miss something during your father's routine maintenance. Claimed he didn't know what would happen." My hands trembled as I buckled my seatbelt. "Did he identify Michael?" "Never met him. Dealt with a middleman." Jack pulled into traffic. "But here's the kicker. Reed kept insurance. Photos of the car's brake line before and after. Proof of tampering. Where are these photos?" "He gave me copies." Jack patted his jacket pocket. Was going to come clean to the police today. Now he's dead. I closed my eyes, processing the horror. Michael had him killed. Seems likely. Which means you're in danger too. Jack's gaze met mine briefly. Reed mentioned something else. Said the guy told him your parents were obstacles. Plural. A chill ran through me. But my mother wasn't supposed to be in the car that day. She decided to join my father at the last minute. Jack nodded grimly. Meaning the target was your father. Your mother was collateral damage. I stared out the window, watching the city blur past. Where are we going? Somewhere safe. I've got a cabin upstate, off the grid. Jack handed me his phone. Call Olivia. Tell her to meet us at the rendezvous point we discussed. Bring the USB drive and anything else important. As I dialed, Jack continued. The photos aren't enough for a conviction, but combined with the recordings and what you overheard, it's enough to open a serious investigation. Olivia answered on the second ring. Jack? What's happening? It's Elizabeth, I said quickly, explaining the situation. I'm already packed, she replied. Been expecting something like this. But Liz, there's more. Your parents' lawyer called. Said it's urgent. Finch? What did he want? Wouldn't say over the phone, just that it changes everything. Olivia's voice dropped. He sounded strange, almost excited. Tell her to contact Finch, Jack instructed. Have him meet us at the cabin. I relayed the message, then hung up, my mind racing. What could Finch have discovered that would change everything? As we left the city behind, I thought about Patricia and the lake house keys. Another piece of the puzzle. Another secret my parents had kept. Jack, I need to make a stop first. My parents had a property Michael doesn't know about. Too risky. It's important, I insisted. My father kept a backup hard drive there. Evidence. Jack considered, then nodded. Where is it? Adirondacks, near Lake Placid. Jack's eyebrows rose. That's close to my cabin. Fine, we'll check it first, but quickly. 3 hours later, we turned onto a narrow gravel road, dense forest crowding both sides. The lake house appeared around a bend, a modest A-frame nestled among towering pines, its large windows reflecting the afternoon sun. Wait here, Jack said, drawing a gun from under his seat. My eyes widened, but I didn't question it. After checking the perimeter, he waved me forward. The key slid smoothly into the lock. Inside, the cabin smelled of pine and memories. Weekends spent here as a child, before the demands of the publishing world consumed my father's time. Studies this way, I murmured, leading Jack down a short hallway. The credenza stood against the wall, exactly as I remembered. Kneeling, I opened the third drawer, feeling beneath it for the false bottom Patricia had described. My fingers found the seam, and the panel lifted easily. There, nestled in the hidden compartment, was a hard drive, a sealed envelope, and a small digital recorder. Jackpot, Jack whispered. I grabbed everything, stuffing it into my bag. As we turned to leave, headlights swept across the front windows. Jack motioned me to silence, peering through the curtains. Black sedan. 2 men. My heart hammered. Michael? Can't tell. Back door? I nodded, leading him through the kitchen. Behind us, the front door splintered with a tremendous crash. Move! Jack pushed me ahead, drawing his gun again. We burst through the back door, racing toward the tree line. Behind us, shouting voices. A gunshot cracked through the evening air. Jack stumbled, clutching his side. Keep going, he gasped. Cabin's 3 miles north. Olivia knows where. I'm not leaving you. Go! He pushed me forward, turning to fire at our pursuers. Tears blinding me. I plunged into the forest, the evidence clutched to my chest like a lifeline. The weight of it all, the betrayal, the loss, the truth still unfolding, drove me forward into the gathering darkness. What I carried might save me, might bring Michael to justice, or it might reveal secrets I wasn't prepared to face. Either way, there was no turning back. The forest grew darker, branches tearing at my clothes as I ran. Behind me, more gunshots, then silence, more terrifying than the noise. My lungs burned, legs trembling with each step, but fear kept me moving. After what felt like hours, I spotted a faint light through the trees. Approaching cautiously, I recognized the rustic outline of Jack's cabin. A figure stood silhouetted in the doorway. "Elizabeth?" Olivia's voice carried through the night air. "It's me," I gasped, stumbling into the clearing. She rushed forward, helping me inside. "Where's Jack?" "They shot him." My voice broke. "He stayed behind so I could escape." Olivia's face paled. "Who? Michael's men?" "I think so. They found us at the lake house." I dropped into a chair, clutching my bag. "We need to call the police." "Already did." A familiar voice made me turn. Gregory Finch stood by the fireplace, looking grim but resolute. "Jack contacted me after speaking with Reed. I had a feeling things would escalate quickly." "Jack may be dying out there," I said, rising. "We need to find him." "State police are searching. They'll find him." Finch gestured to my bag. "What did you recover?" I emptied the contents onto the table, the hard drive, envelope, and recorder. Something my parents wanted me to have. Finch picked up the envelope, examining the seal. "This has my firm's watermark." "Open it," I urged. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a DNA test result. I scanned it, confused. "These are my parents' DNA profiles, but who is this third person?" Finch studied the paper, then looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. "There's something you need to know, Elizabeth. Something your parents wanted revealed only if the worst happened." "What is it?" "The accident wasn't the first attempt on your father's life." Finch's voice was steady. "There was an incident 3 years ago, a hit and run that nearly killed him. It frightened them enough to take extreme measures." "What measures?" "They faked their deaths." The room tilted around me. "What did you just say?" "The bodies in those caskets weren't your parents." "The DNA test proves it?" Finch pointed to the paper. "Your parents are alive, Elizabeth. They've been in protective custody, working with federal authorities to build a case against Pinnacle Media Group." I sank back into the chair, disbelief warring with hope. "That's impossible. I identified their bodies." "You saw what they wanted you to see. The bodies were carefully chosen to match their general appearance. The car crash made positive identification difficult. But why? Why put me through this?" "To protect you," came a new voice from the doorway. I turned, my heart stopping in my chest. There, pale but unmistakably alive, stood my father, and beside him, my mother. "Dad?" I whispered, unable to move, unable to believe. "Mom?" My mother rushed forward, enveloping me in her arms, her familiar perfume washing over me. "My darling girl, I'm so sorry." "You're alive," I sobbed, reaching for my father as he joined our embrace. "You're really alive." "We had no choice," Dad explained, his voice rough with emotion. "When we discovered what Michael and Pinnacle were planning, not just the takeover, but the involvement of organized crime in their financing, we knew they'd stop at nothing. The FBI approached us," Mom continued. "Said our best chance was to disappear, let them think they'd succeeded. It gave the authorities time to build their case. But you let me think you were dead." Anger cut through my shock. "You left me with Michael." "We thought you'd be safer that way," Dad said, regret etched in his face. "Michael wanted our assets, not to harm you. We never imagined he'd abandon you so cruelly. We monitored everything," Mom added. "When he left you at the funeral, we knew we had to accelerate our plans." A knock at the door interrupted us. Jack entered, supported by 2 state troopers, his side bandaged, but standing on his own. "Sorry for the dramatics," he grimaced. "Flesh wound. Played dead till they left." "Jack's been working with us from the beginning," my father explained. "Former FBI, not just an author." The pieces fell into place. Jack's convenient appearance, his expertise, his preparedness. "You've all been orchestrating this." "Not all of it," Olivia interjected. "My friendship was always real. I just knew more than I could tell you." I looked around at these people who had deceived me, protected me, guided me through the darkest days of my life. Anger and gratitude warred within me. "What happens now?" "Now," my father said. "We end this. The evidence you recovered, combined with what we've gathered, is enough to bring down Michael, Harrington, and the entire operation. Michael will be arrested tonight," Jack added, "along with everyone involved in Reed's murder and the attempt on my life." Dawn was breaking as we sat around the table, plans laid out. My parents would remain in protective custody until the arrests were complete. Then, a new beginning. Wheeler Publishing? I asked. Yours, Dad said simply. It was always meant to be. Not just the company, I realized, but the strength to lead it, the resilience to face whatever came next. Qualities I'd always had but never recognized until Michael's betrayal forced me to stand on my own. As the morning light strengthened, I felt something settle within me. Not just relief at my parents' survival, but a newfound certainty. The woman who had stood broken in that cemetery was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who would never again surrender her power to anyone. Michael had meant to destroy me. Instead, he had forged me anew, like a phoenix, rising unexpected from the ashes of what was lost.